We begin a few hours after previous events, where the sun has just risen and Clementine's group is recovering from the attack they just survived from the Delta, a group of raiders. After interrogating Abel, a member of the Delta, for the location of the SS Stuart Fitzgerald, the Delta's ship, which serves as their base and main transport, the group proceeds to scout it out and prepare for a rescue mission to save their 3 captured friends. This involves tracking down James, a former member of the Whisperers, a group of survivors who disguise themselves with zombie, or walker, skin, to blend in and remain unnoticed among them. James begins leading a nearby pack of walkers towards the ship, so Clementine's group can use them as cover to approach it. Clementine and the other 2 children, AJ and Violet, smear the guts of a dead walker on themselves and join in amongst the pack. The raiders rouse at the sight of the herd, the searchlight being used to highlight the individual walkers to assist the sniper in shooting them. When the searchlight falls upon Clementine, she quickly jumps behind a walker in front of her and uses it as a shield. The sniper shoots the walker she holds and moves on to a different walker in the herd, allowing Clementine to advance. She then leads AJ and Violet to the edge of the pier before boarding the ship, while the other members of her group, Ruby, Willie, and Tennessee, trigger their distractions. Clementine signals for AJ and Violet to enter the boiler room with her, and they plant a bomb inside the boiler. They continue on to find the brig, seeing Dorian, a more experienced member of the Delta, and Minerva, a former member of Clementine's group. Minerva is left guarding the brig, leading Clementine and Violet to conclude that they have no choice but to go through Minerva to reach their imprisoned friends. Clementine draws her bow on Minerva as she levels her crossbow in reply. Minerva demands that she leave immediately, but Clementine refuses as AJ stands beside her and raises his pistol. Minerva seemingly makes the decision to help Clementine flee the ship with the other children, on the condition that she takes Tennessee, Minerva's brother, back to safety. Clementine agrees, running over to the cells and discovering Asim and Omar, 2 captured members of her group, alive in one of them. Omar tells her to tend to Lewis first before helping them, and Minerva unlocks Lewis's cell to let Clementine inside. Clementine slowly enters the cell, finding Lewis huddled in the corner, not responding to her calls, and silently facing the wall. Minerva attacks her from behind, knocking her out and forcing the other 2 intruders to enter an empty cell. Clementine awakens sometime later, having been stripped of her weapons and locked in the cell. Lewis is turned toward her as she wakes up and desperately grabs her for comfort as he wordlessly sobs. Clementine asks Lewis what they've done to him, leading Asim to inform her that they cut out his tongue when he refused to stop talking. Clementine determines that the panels blocking her from accessing the cell door's locking peg could be pried off if she had a tool to chip away at them. She asks AJ if he still has his small knife, prompting him to reveal that the raiders didn't find it when searching him. He slides it to her under the cell doors, allowing her to begin cutting into the shoddy panel. Before she can make much progress, however, Dorian suddenly bangs on her cell door and orders her to stop making noise. Lily, a leader of the Delta, arrives, and Minerva steps into place behind her. Lily demands to know what has become of Abel, while AJ taunts her with the news of what they had done to him. Drawing her sidearm, Lily tells Clementine to retreat from the door, and Clementine manages to kick the knife under a cot before Lily can see it. Minerva opens the cell, allowing Lily inside. Initially keeping her weapon drawn on Clementine, Lily states that she would normally have killed a troublemaker like her, but she was impressed with how she managed to lead untrained children to fight against her soldiers and devised a plan to sneak aboard her ship. Lily begins a story she titles The Parable of the Twins. Without naming them directly, Lily describes how Minerva and her twin sister, Sophie, had been brought to a home away from their friends and family. Their new home provided them food, showers, beds, and survival training with guns, but it required them to defend it from thieves and murderers who wanted their resources. Lily says that one of the twins had grown to accept that the Delta was their new home, but the other had tried to escape back to the school, the home base of Clementine's group. Minerva and Sophie had stolen a raft to try to flee downriver and return to the school, but they didn't get far. Lily then pointedly asks Minerva how the story ends. Minerva appears to set aside her doubts and reveals the truth. She killed her own sister because she needed to show loyalty to the Delta after making the mistake of trying to leave. The group members are shocked to learn that Minerva murdered Sophie. Lily asks Clementine which twin she would resemble, the loyal one or the dead one. As Violet begins to shout at Lily for twisting Minerva into a killer, Clementine promises to kill Lily. To illustrate the consequences of disobedience and dissent, Lily stands and orders Dorian to pull Violet out of AJ's cell. She throws Violet to the ground outside of the cell and raises a meat cleaver over Violet's hand, while Lily forces Clementine to remain in place with her pistol. Violet struggles, with AJ sneaking up behind Dorian as Clementine watches. Clementine says nothing as AJ jumps onto Dorian's back and bites down on her left ear. Dorian violently throws him off her, making Clementine cry out for him. Unfazed, he spits out the piece of Dorian's ear onto the floor, sitting still as Dorian recognizes her missing ear and angrily kicks AJ in the jaw, causing Clementine to scream for her to stop. Lily tells Dorian to leave them, and Dorian drags Violet back into her cell. AJ recovers from the blow, declares that Lily deserves to die, and that they will kill her. Lily appears to notice AJ's fervor and drive, leaving Clementine's cell and going to talk with him. AJ says that he killed Marlon, the former leader of Clementine's group before his betrayal, and would kill her in the same way. She crouches down to inspect him more closely, thinking that he would make a great soldier for the Delta. Despite Clementine's protests, she takes AJ away in the hopes that she can sway him to her side. Minerva and Dorian lock the cells, preventing Clementine from getting to AJ, as Lily orders Minerva to guard them and Dorian to activate the boiler. Minerva urges Clementine to be quiet and accept that this was her only chance of staying alive, but this warning outrages Violet so much that Minerva becomes distracted. Clementine takes advantage of the distraction to go for the small knife she kicked under the bed. She recovers the knife, chips the bolts off the door, and removes the locking pin on the other side before ramming the door and tackling Minerva, giving her enough time to free Violet. Minerva recovers, wrestling Clementine to the ground with a knife, trying to push it into her chest. Violet recovers Minerva's crossbow and begs her to stop, but Minerva refuses. Before Minerva can deliver the killing blow, Violet shoots her through her right shoulder. Faltering, Minerva falls off of Clementine and slips into unconsciousness. Violet is distraught at having to shoot her former lover, quickly tending to her. Clementine spares a brief glance for them before freeing Asim and Omar. She tries to convince Violet to escape with the others, but Violet is unable to bring herself to leave Minerva in her wounded state. With Asim helping Lewis, still traumatized and unable to fight after having his tongue removed, out of his cell, Violet refusing to leave her former lover's side, and Omar still injured after the attack on the school, Clementine decides to go after Lily alone, imploring the others to get off of the ship before the bomb explodes, and promising Asim that they'll see her later. She takes Minerva's knife, leaves the other children, and heads off to find AJ. Clementine emerges on the deck of the ship, the herd having been dealt with and the rest of the raiders unaware of the prisoner's escape. She sees Lily dragging AJ by the arm, and pauses to note that the boiler has been started. She hears Lily's voice from the opposite side of the deck, taking cover as Lily tries to tempt AJ with the promise of a better life with the Delta for both him and Clementine. Avoiding a raider on the deck, Clementine gets close enough to see two other raiders present Tennessee to Lily, having captured him when he had gotten too close to the docks. Another raider presents James to Lily, as the other two raiders leave, having removed his mask and beaten him down. Clementine gets closer to them, prowling behind the ship's equipment while Lily and James criticize each other's manner of survival. After spitting at James's feet, Lily orders James to be killed. The other raider steps up to execute him with a rifle, but Tennessee surprises everyone when he grabs the raider's pistol and points it at the Delta soldiers. Tennessee begs them to let them leave, but Lily, sensing his hesitation and fear, confidently approaches him and leans her head into the end of his weapon, daring him to shoot. Tennessee breaks down in front of the others, Lily disappointedly taking the pistol from his hands. She decides that he is not worth her time and prepares to execute him, but AJ intervenes and bites into her wrist. James quickly tackles the other raider during a moment of distraction, and the two of them begin wrestling for the gun. Clementine charges forward from cover and slams into Lily, knocking the gun out of her hand and sending both of them to the ground. Lily manages to get on top of Clementine and begins strangling her, but AJ takes the knife and plunges it into Lily's leg. Lily manages to kick AJ and send him to the ground, but the opening is enough for Clementine to twist the knife using her foot. Both of them tumble to the ground and go for the gun, but AJ gets to it first, somberly raising it on Lily. Lily raises one of her hands and announces her surrender. She pledges that she and the rest of the Delta will leave and never return to try to take them in exchange for his mercy. James tosses the other raider to the ground and her rifle off the side of the ship and into the water below, then turns to AJ and pleads with him not to kill Lily, as she has surrendered. AJ brings up what happened in the cells below and keeps his gun on Lily. Clementine painfully pulls herself back to her feet against the railing, watching as Tennessee argues that Lily is lying, while James steps forward to take the gun from AJ, who looks to Clementine for a decision on what to do with Lily. Clementine yells, "Do it, AJ!" and he quickly turns back to Lily, shooting her in the head, ending her life instantly. James is left shocked that AJ could so casually kill another person, then shouts for him to stop as he fires several more bullets into Lily's corpse. AJ takes a breath and lowers the gun, still looking at Lily's dead body. James stares at Clementine for a moment before another raider comes to report to Lily that the other children were still missing. Seeing her leader dead, the raider raises her rifle on Clementine. Before she can shoot, however, the ship rumbles, the boiler having been activated. Clementine rushes to grab AJ before the bomb explodes, but she is a moment too late. The deck of the ship bursts into flames, the force tossing Clementine off her feet and into a wall, knocking her unconscious as chaos erupts around her.